In a music mix, there are only 4 ways to create separation between the instruments and voices so they can be clearly heard in the mix. Here they are: volume, EQ, panning, and effects. That's all you get. Let's start with the obvious: volume. This is the one everyone knows. If you can't hear the piano, you turn it up. Here's the problem with that. What if you have 3 female background singers? If you turn one of them up, more than likely you won't hear the other 2 as well, which causes you to turn them up, and round you go. Volume is only good at separating a few things, or one thing, from others. Or it can separate sounds that are very different from each other, like a bass and the cymbals from your drum kit. As soon as the sounds are similar, volume doesn't work very well in separating them. That's why your monitor mixers are so difficult. You're generally only using volume to try to separate the parts from each other. And how well is that working out for you? Now let's skip to panning. Pan is actually short for panoramic, or a wide view of something. Panning on a mixer allows you to send more or less of each sound to the left and right sides of the stereo outputs to simulate a panoramic sound field. When you're listening in stereo, it gives you the ability to make a sound appear as though it were coming from a particular direction. This is an excellent way to get separation in a recording that'll be played back over stereo speakers. Here's the problem: you don't have a stereo PA. All right, well, you might have a stereo PA, but almost no one in your audience can experience stereo. Stereo requires 2 speakers that form an equilateral triangle with the listener, meaning you need to be right in between the 2 speakers and the same distance from each speaker as the speakers are from each other, making an equilateral triangle. As soon as you're outside a very small area right in the middle, the stereo image collapses. So even if you can use panning in live sound, you either create an effect few people can hear and a very odd mix for most people in the audience, or you must limit stereo panning to a very small amount. Either way, it's not very effective in creating separation in your live sound mix. That's 2 strikes now. Volume only works a little, and panning, even if you have it, doesn't work well either. Now let's talk about effects. When I say effects, I'm talking about reverb or delay effects that simulate a sound being in a particular space. Here's how this works in a recording. We tend to record each voice and instrument by itself in a very dry room, meaning you don't hear any reverb or echoes from the room. Then in the mix, you can control the amount of reverb or echoes that each sound has. When a sound is dry and has no reverb or echo, it sounds close and in your face when played back. Then as you add more effects, it seems to move away from you in the mix. Using more or less effect on each sound in the mix creates separation of the parts in the mix. Here's strike 3. In your church or any live sound venue, you have room reflections and reverb on everything, whether you want it or not. And adding even more artificial effects doesn't create any separation. Now, it might make your singer sound a little better, but that's a different video. So we are left with the one thing that is effective in creating separation in your mix: EQ. Using EQ effectively is the best way to separate sounds from each other in a live sound mix. I find this to be the thing sound techs know the least about, and they're the most confused by. And I think learning all you can about EQ and practicing a lot is the most important thing you can do to create better live sound mixes. Check out every video on this site that has to do with EQ, and you'll be quite a way down the road to making good live mixes. I'm Greg Hill for AV Genius.